So, welcome to the Happiness Mind Information Evening. I'm happy you came and that you decided to be informed more about. We have an emphasis today. The emphasis is about depression. And so there's a lot of things to cover. We will probably not cover everything tonight, maybe another time more, but it's good to learn and to understand more about the depression. I think most of you know me, but because it's recorded, maybe some people who signed up will watch it later. So I'm an international recognized top speaker. I'm mentoring people from business, sport, and medicine. I'm executive coach for CEOs. I'm coach leaders of Fortune 500 and also small and middle entrepreneurs. I have been on many stages in my life, and I'm the founder of the Lenart Leadership Institute. And I'm very happy that I can be with you tonight together. 2024, I was the main speaker for the Emotional Summit, for the EQ Summit in the States, organized by Dr. Neil Nedley, which I have learned so many things from him. And I'm very happy that I can be a member of several different big associations, of speaker associations, and also belonging to the top 100 speakers in Europe. So let's go into the topic. We want to talk and think about it. How can you actually recognize depression? We want to think about is what early warning signs do most people overlook, and we want to see why successful and driven people often especially are affected by depression. And then also we want to understand, most important, of course, how can we regain inner strength, clarity, and joy in our lives? Again, some general facts about depression. Look at that, 280 million. Can you imagine how many stadiums, soccer stadiums, would that be? That would be amazing a lot. In Europe alone, we have 40 million people of depression. That's quite a lot. If you look to the European Union, only the mental health disorders, with it also depression, anxiety disorders, panic, addictions, substance abuse, eating disorders, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia. We have like 84 million people only in the European Union. And depression is among the top 3 causes of disability worldwide. So that's a big number, isn't it? And lots of money is spent in every country, more than 600 billion per year because of healthcare cost, lost productivity, social cost. So depression costs a lot of money, not only for the state, for the government, for the health insurances, but also for all those who have depression. Because most of the people, not everybody, but many people are going less to work or no more to work. And then you can think about it, how much money are you losing because of depression? So it's a lot of money involved as well. So in many countries, and this is also very interesting, in many countries, 50% of the people with depression, there is no treatment, nothing. They don't do anything. They don't go to the doctor. The doctor doesn't know what to do, whatever. But there's 50%. So 50% is without treatment. And then depression is major risk factor for suicide worldwide. We have 700,000 people worldwide who are killing themselves. So that's a big number, isn't it? Too huge. I'm very happy that I could save at least some of the lives who wanted to commit suicide in my life. That's always very special. And look at that. That's a big increase of young adults, 18 to 25. Show one of the fastest increases in depression rates in many Western countries. Yes, so many young people are getting depression. So it's not the middle age or the older one. Many young people, they not even know that they have depression. Some of them know. Some of them, they don't want to know it. But it's a huge number growing at the moment with young people having depression. So until 2030, according to the World Health Organization, depression is already one of the leading causes of disability worldwide, and it is expected to become the #1 disease. Can you imagine? So that's not too far away. That's 4 more years, and it's #1 worldwide, depression. So I think it's good to be prepared for ourselves, to get more resilience, to get mental health, to get more balance, to get stronger, and to know how to help others, at least how to recognize in others, and maybe give them a hint, give them this video what we are recording today, so that they can grow and that they can start doing something against it. Because that's very, very important. Because if you don't know what to do, it's very hard, right? So let's go to the second point. No, to the first one. It's not this one yet. How you actually recognize depression. You want to know it? Okay. So it's 9 points according to the National Institute of Mental Health. It's 9 symptoms are associated with disease of major depression. And we have point number one is a very deep sadness, very deep. Sometimes it's caused by, so that people say, I am sad because this building was sold. It was a long time in my generation. Or they say somebody died, or somebody said this and this happened to me. So, but sometimes it's without a reason, but often people they mingle the sadness with something in their life. It doesn't need to be that sad, but somehow they mingle, they put it together with the depression, and then they really cling to that sadness. So usually, if somebody dies, there is a time of approximately 1 year of sorrow and deep sorrow and crying and being down. But if you're 10 years in a very deep, sad condition, that's not only because somebody died or you lost something, but that's very obvious that there is a depression mixed into all this sadness. So first number one is sadness and emptiness. People feel very, very empty in depression and very deep sadness. And then the next one, number two, is an apathy, diminished interest or pleasure in almost all activities. So we just had a young person coming to the depression recovery program, and this person was very young. It was 21 years old, and this person said, I have no interest in anything, nothing, nothing. She even said, life is going down, so deep depression. That's a very, very big sign. No interest or pleasure in almost any activities. And then there's also a restlessness. So people are having this inner fight. There are no peace. So there's always like a fight or sound, in the body, in the minds. There's always something going on. They do not cannot really calm down, rest, have peace, sit down. But at the same time, you see body slow down. That's very interesting. So most depressive people, it's very obvious as well because the body is getting slower. It's slowing down. So that's a combination. And then number four is sleep disturbances. So that's very strong. They have night problems, but also feel very sleepy all day. They have difficulties to getting up. They have difficulty to start the sleep, and they often wake up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, early morning, or I could also say middle of the night, and then they will not sleep until the morning, what most of them are describing. And then point number five is that they have weight disturbances. Either they are gaining a lot of weight or they are losing a lot of weight, both directions. Often we can see that in depression programs that people are fighting with the wrong direction they took. So that's also a sign which should not be overseen. There is number six, it's a lack of concentration. They have difficulties in making decisions. They have difficulties in clear thinking. Sometimes they are sitting in front of a paper, very easy homework, and they're just sitting 5, 10, 15 minutes and they have no idea what to fill out. But it's very easy, very simple. So that can be also a sign of depression, the lack of concentration. Then number seven, that's very strong, feeling of excessive guilt or worthlessness. So they are using the big hammer to judge themselves. And that's the guilt. Either they have only a guilt feeling, because to be guilty and to have a guilt feeling is different. Usually I ask them, what is guilt? And they usually don't really know how to define it, but they have a very strong feeling of guilt, and then they are convinced of worthlessness. So that's very excessive, very strong. And then number eight is thoughts to commit suicide. They say, like, if I would not live, that would be the best solution. Or people are talking about the fastest solution. Um, uh, and some of them are planning, some of them have not planned, but they just think it would be nice. Some of them say it's like a strange power overcoming me and guides me into this thought I should kill myself. Um, uh, and some of them become silent, they have a plan, and they want to do that as well. So there's the different stages of thoughts, desire, strong desire, overwhelming thoughts, overwhelming power, and also silence. That's very dangerous. If somebody's not talking, but you just feel something is going wrong here, he is he's he already planned his committing suicide, and then he's very, very close to it to really do it that. And then number nine is connected to number four, but not necessarily. Number nine is this very strong fatigue, the lack of energy almost every day. It's very hard to work, to study, to do something, even it's maybe just washing the laundry or washing the dishes, or just normal things. Maybe even have a walk with the dog. So it's a tremendous fatigue, a lack of energy people are experiencing if they have depression. So, according to that National Institute of Mental Health, they say if you have 5 to 9 points experienced in the last 2 weeks, you have a defined major depression. So you can go through that 9 points and you say, okay, I feel like deep sadness, I have restlessness in me, something happened with my weight, either up or down. I feel really excessive guilt or worthlessness, and I am lacking of energy. That would be really already 5 points. So that would show you that you have a major depression in your life. Um, um, then, if you have only 2 points or 4 points, 2 to 4 points out of these 9 points in the last 2 weeks, then you have a mild form of depression. Well, mild form is already dangerous because most mild forms goes into a stronger depression, and it ends up with a major depression. So either you have a mild, major, or no depression. I think it's good to know that they are 9 points. It's 5 to 9. If you hit it, you have a major depression. If you hit 2 to 4 points, you have a mild form of depression. So I think this list is very good. It's used also in different seminars worldwide, and so I think it's a very simple but at the same time very effective. So what I would like to give you now, I put that into the chat, um, so you can click on that. And I also give you a few minutes, because usually you need 3 minutes for that. You see that in the chat? So this is the so-called Beck's test. Beck's test is worldwide known for his test of finding out if you have depression. So you just click on it and this will open up. And then you see there are questions, um, uh, about 21 questions, I think. And you just fill out your first name, last name, your email, and your phone number, and you go through that, and you just click in that. So you get a result, and we will send you the result and let you know if you have a depression. If yes, if it's a soft depression, a middle depression, or maybe even a major depression. So I tell you, many, many, many people I meet, they have no idea if they have any depression. They're maybe fighting with something, but I think sometimes it's also good to have a bit of overview. So if you would be so kind and just fill out your first and last name, your email, and your phone number, and then you look at the sadness and you say, I'm not sad. You click the first one. If you say, I'm often sad, you click the second one. I'm constantly sad. You click the third one. I am so sad and unhappy that I cannot stand it. You click the next one. And then you go to pessimism, and then we ask you for pessimism. You can make their choice. Just take the first one which comes into mind, and then past failures. I do not feel like a failure. I have failed more often than I should have. When I look back, I see many failures. I feel like a complete failure as a person. Then we talk about feelings of guilt. That's also very important. You can make a click in the choice here. Don't think too much about it, just read through it and then whatever fits for you. Then feelings of being punished. Many people, I just had a conversation last week with an entrepreneur, with a businessman, and he says, um, uh, the Bible says that whatever you throw out the seed, you will harvest. And now I'm harvesting. He has depression and he thinks he is guilty for being depressed, and that's because he gets punished for things in his life, right? So if you think the same thing, you should cross some of these things here. But I think it's a feeling of being punished. Many people experience. Then we have here dislike of self. If you say, I don't like myself, you can also cross that. I'm disappointed in myself. I dislike myself. Or we go to self-criticism. You see some questions here as well. And also the suicidal thoughts and wishes. If there's, I never think about killing myself, you click this one. If there's any desire sometimes, you click another one. And then the same thing about crying. I do not cry more than I used to. I cry more than I used to. I cry over little things. I feel like crying, but I cannot. There are some people who have depression. We had them also just 2 weeks ago. There were two people who said, I would like to cry, but I have not cried since many years. So that was a victory when this person started to cry, right? But sometimes crying is too much. Some people, they're crying every day. I had some people who said they're coming home from their work and then they put their back on the door. They just go down at the door and then they're starting to cry. And this every day after work. So that seems to be a sign. And that's very important. If this is also in your life, you can cross whatever is true in your life. And then you go to restlessness. We just talked about that a bit more. Or the loss of interest. If you say, I have not lost interest in other people or activities, that's both people and activities. You cross number one. And then you go through that and you can see what fits best to you. And then some people are very strong in making decisions. Some people, they never make decisions, or only some of the decisions, but many decisions, they just put it off. So that's also something very important. And then worthlessness, how strong is your self-esteem, so your self-value, how strong is your respect, self-respect. So that's very important points. And then we here on number 15, we talk about the loss of energy. And then changes in sleep habits, that's also very important. Irritability, what happens in your life. Then changes in appetite, that's also very important. So back goes through these points, and then difficulty in concentrating, and then tiredness and fatigue. And there's also the number 21. This is also Beck's important question, is the loss of interest in sex. Because many people who are depressed, they are experiencing the same thing, and it has an effect also on the partnership. So I think this test is very good. We are using it all the time since many years. It's very recognized by the clinics worldwide, and it's a good, fast possibility to go through it and to see where you stand. So if you make the test, I can send you the results. If you want to, you can see it clearly. Is there anything in your life? Maybe you say, but I am ashamed. I don't want to do that. Yes, I know. I have even a YouTube message, but it's in German, where I talk about shame and depression. Many famous actors, many famous people around the world, even soccer players, politicians, and so on. So I'm going through that video and I'm talking about who has depression, who had depression, and many people don't know that there are so many people who have depression, even from the famous and the rich ones and the beauty ones and so on. So don't be ashamed. I think it's an important look into your life. And then you can give that also to your family members, this link. You can, and I send you the results. Or if you have friends or relatives, you want to share this video with them and give them the link, feel free to do so. Just let me know that you send that and somebody sent in, because I'm not every day checking this link. You know what I mean? But no, of course, as I now we're going through this video, I will look tonight if somebody filled it out. And if you say, oh, but I gave it to a friend, a colleague, and he wants to do it in 3 days, just let me know by WhatsApp, and then I can check and then can send the results as well. All right. So, what early warning signs do most people overlook? So, this is very interesting and very, very important. Many people don't think about depression and stroke, that this is related to each other. But you have to know that there is an increased death risk by depression by 50%, because depression alters the platelets, that small cells particles, which is circulating in the bloodstream, causing them to become overactive, which increases the risk that an artery with a cholesterol buildup will become blocked. So this is very, very important, because many of the programs we have, many of the people, they had a stroke in the past. So it's not sometimes, at every course we have, there's at least one or two person. I had a young man, I have even a YouTube video about him. He how old was he? I have to check the YouTube video, but I think he was 30 something. And he is giving his testimony how he had this stroke and what happened in his life. And he said, I also had depression. Then he came to one of my programs and he got totally healed. He came out of depression. But you have to know, many people don't know that depression and strokes are closely connected to each other. So I think that's a very important information for you, so that you or your relatives, family members don't oversee that, but understand that depression alters these platelets, and this can really cause very big danger in our body. And so we have to know, in order to stay healthy, be healthy, we need to work on overcoming depression, because otherwise we feel like a prisoner. We don't know what to do. But also the heart attacks is very dangerous. Sadness or lack of energy that cannot be explained. That's usually what happens if somebody had a heart attack. The first 2 weeks, people say, I had a very deep sadness and a lack of energy. If it stays only for 2 weeks, this is not a depression. But it should not be longer than 2 weeks. That's very important. So heart patients with major depression are 150% more likely to die within 2 years than non-depressed counterparts. That's a very short time, isn't it? So if somebody had already heart problems and it's combined with major depression, this should be really dealt with as soon as possible, because time countdown is clicking here, because 2 years goes by very fast. People not doing something, they're not lazy, but they don't think it's really important. This is normal. I'm sad. It's not so bad. But if he is a heart patient already with major depression, then it's very, very important that he acts as soon as possible, because his time clock is clicking faster than the other ones. So depression increases disturbances in heart rhythm and decreases the heart's ability to speed up with activity or slow down to rest. So depression is the threat of recovery for heart patients. Treatment is a must. I had one participant coming to the depression recovery seminar, the program, and she said, I have so many, I went to so many clinics, I have heart problems. It's like a knife in my heart. It aches so much. I have so much pain in my heart. And after 4 days, she said, I can't believe it, Kris. This knife is not in my heart anymore. And I can breathe, I can walk, I can do sport, you know. So this was very strongly connected, the psyche, which the body, right? So we call it psyche somatic symptoms. So this is strongly related to each other. And in our times, we say 9 from 10 sicknesses comes from the mind or from the psyche. So you see, this can be very strongly related to each other, and it's very important to look at it because it's really depression. It's not just I am sad, but look, it increases disturbances in heart rhythm. You know that if we feel sad and if we feel mood, there is even a symptom which is called um, broken heart syndrome. Maybe you heard about that. Is somebody is so sad because somebody died, maybe your pet or a person, you can or maybe broke up in your relationship. Somebody can be so sad that only because of sadness the heart stops to beat. Have you heard about that? Broken heart syndrome. So this is similar to depression, but not so strong, of course, as the broken heart syndrome. But depression has also an effect on your heart. And we need to know that because another study shows that depression triples the risk of contracting heart disease in men who have never had heart problems. Can you imagine? So you can be healthy, you can eat healthy, you can move, yeah, you can do sport, but if depression comes in your life, then it triples the risk of contracting heart disease. And so that's very dangerous. There's another danger. It's about, called cancer. We know that good mental health. Maybe I do one day an extra seminar about that, cancer and the importance of a healthy psychology. Good mental health may improve, of course, the chance of recovery from cancer. That's very important. I would like even to put away this may. It improves the chance of recovering a lot because the mind has a lot to do with our immune system. Depression weakens the immune system power, and that's what we need because our body is fighting against cancer cells all the time, all the time. Everybody of us has cancer cells in his body. That's very normal. The only thing is if we getting too much stress, if we get weak, if we get overworked or too less work, there needs to be a balance between overworking, not to be overworked and not to be bored. So, right? So it's very important. And as we have good thoughts, important thoughts, healthy thoughts, this really boosts up our immune system, and then the immune system is fighting alone against cancer cells. That's the body how we have been created. But having depression for more than 6 years increases the risk of getting cancer. Yeah, so that's very important to know as well, because the immune system is so weak that the cancer can be stronger than our health. So that would be bad. Then, of course, people will not recognize this symptom, but I will show you how they recognize this symptom. The next one, it's the reduced brain size. Depression reduces your hippocampal size 9 to 13%. So people recognize not to get a smaller brain, but they recognize it because they say, oh, learning was much easier in the past. It's so difficult now. Or where is my key? I don't know where my key is. I'm always looking for my key. And did I lock the door? It's losing memory because the hippocampal size by depression is attacked. But not only this one, but also the amygdala. Amygdala is responsible for the emotions. And then also what is very, very tough to see, but I have seen documentations where the frontal lobe, which is here very important, getting smaller as well. Can you imagine? And that's the seat of personality, and that's the seat of making decisions. So some people are not recognized anymore. They are changing so much because of depression. Their personality is changing because the frontal lobe is getting smaller. They're having making the, they are they're having difficulties in making decisions because their frontal lobe is getting smaller. So that's a big point, right? Our brain. So we have to take care of our brain. There is no playground with depression. to wait for what? What shall we wait for? Oh, one day it gets better. No, depression doesn't get better just by waiting. We need to do something. We will talk about what we can do about that in a few minutes. So there is an increased stress hormone level. Depression, depression suppresses certain mind and body function, but it actually increases the output of at least three hormones. So you have the hypothalamic hormone, the pituitary hormone, and the blood cortisol. So these stress hormones, first one starts, the second comes, the third one comes. And then you think maybe, oh, I'm so stressed because of much work, or maybe I'm stressed because of my parents, or I'm stressed because of my children, I'm stressed because of my partner. But the stress is usually, if you have depression, you will know that if you make the test, better. But if you have depression, you have to remember, you have to know it's not only the stress outside of you, but it's depression increases the output, at least, of these three stress hormones. So that's very, very important because people make the wrong conclusions in their life if they don't know that depression actually increases the output of hormones, of stress hormones. That's very important to know. Then we have another thing which Solomon knew already because in Proverbs 15, verse 30, in Proverbs 16:24, in Proverbs 17, verse 22, you can read these verses. I can put that also into the chat if you want to copy that. Um, uh, he already talks about the health and the bones. That's very interesting because the depressed average bone mineral density was 6% lower in the spine and 10 to 14% lower in the hip. So somehow this depression is also attacking our bones. Did you know that? It's crazy, isn't it? Um, um, and then people are wondering, oh, did I maybe um, have too less calcium, or what is the reason for that? But we have to know that depression is dangerous. It's not something we can wait. One of my family members had depression and waited for 10 years, but without changing anything. So without change, there will be no new start. There will be no new outcome. You stay in depression. You cannot wait until it becomes better, but it will have a long, strong effect on all your body parts. And so we don't want to wait for that. We want to deal and act as soon as possible. As you recognize there's something to do, um, uh, please contact me so that we can work with you to change your condition and to come out of this depression, because it's not worth even to stay one day in depression, not 1 week, not 1 month. Please don't stay over years in depression. Hypertension. I don't know when the last time you measured your blood pressure, but you have to know that depression is the major contributor, right? Um, um, because many, many people, almost every test we did, today I only gave you the test for depression, but usually in our programs we give out the depression test. And if you're interested in, I can also give you out the anxiety test. It's Beck's test, both sides. Um, and everybody until now, what we had in all the 12 years, I am dealing with the health center in Germany, and we are helping more, we helped more than 500 people coming out of depression. In my Happiness Mind online program, I helped more than 100 people coming out of burnout and depression. And every time when we do this test, we see depression is high, anxiety also is affected. So the people are having much more fear than somebody who is in a mental health. So this combination increases the risk of developing high blood pressure. With men, it's 50%. That's quite a lot. With women, 70%. Don't ask me why with black women 200%. You know, but that's what the scientific research says. So high blood pressure, if somebody is affected by high blood pressure, of course, high blood pressure can have a lot of reasons, but have it in mind If somebody made a lot of different tests and he doesn't know why he has high blood pressure, don't just have it in mind. Is there maybe also a depression? And if yes, that could be one of the reasons for hypertension, the so-called high blood pressure. Too much cortisol put out by the adrenal glands in response to depression can cause osteoporosis and high blood pressure. And then, of course, this goes also to blood sugar. Some of the people who have diabetics and depression, that's very hard. Controlling blood sugar is much harder controlling when the diabetic patient is also depressed, anxious, or excessively stressed. Um, so that's a big point as well. Maybe you know some people who have diabetics and maybe combined with stress or combined with depression or with fear. That's a very, very difficult combination and that should be controlled as fast as possible. Well, look at that. And that's very interesting. I was just um, many years not aware of that, but I was listening how people are breathing, and I can really confirm that from all what I have observed um, from the last 12 years and even longer by working since 12 years with depressive people that people who report higher levels of stress and depression are more than twice as likely to develop asthma. Depression and anxiety seem to be a major contributors to the development of asthma, particularly in non-smokers. Isn't that interesting? So now you maybe understand as we are going through this list, oh man, this makes sense. And you see some of the signs which you have thought this is just health and this is just a problem. But now you maybe see the missing link. And the missing link was there is maybe a depression behind all these things. And then this next point, ooh, we have every time we have a seminar, every time we have dealing people with that, it's a headache. It's a chronic tension headache combined with anxiety and depression. There is a study shows that nearly half of those reporting chronic tension headaches have depression. Can you imagine? Half of those, 50%. And that's we had just a client, a participant in the seminar as we have this how to come out of depression. This is just an information evening tonight. But as we have the program, as we are helping people to come out in a program of 3, 6, and 9 months, usually it takes some months to come out. You cannot make it in 2 weeks or 10 days. Um, but as we are developing this program and people are in, they also have a release in their headaches. Usually they don't have this pain anymore. It releases all the stress, all this tension, all these muscle tensions, what they have. So that's also very interesting. And you have to know that people with depression are highly addicted, dangerous, addicted people. The people with major depression are 3 times more likely to become smokers or even hospitalized for alcohol dependence. Depressed patients relapsed 3 times faster than those not having depression. So it's here we only have smoking or alcohol, which is usually combined with depression, either or both of it, but also eating disorders, eating a lot of cheese, eating a lot of chocolates, eating a lot of sugar, usually goes also with this very strong addictions with depression. So it's not seldom that depressive people are also at the same time addicted, and that makes a big burden, I tell you, because if you have depression, that's already a big task, right, to solve. And many people not have even the keys. They have no ideas that depression can be solved. They're depending on the medical doctor. They're depending on the clinics, and nothing happens. They're just taking the medicine, and it's not getting better. It's not getting worse, and they're just in a waiting position. But waiting doesn't help. And then additional to that, they're not only carrying the burden on their shoulders of, I have a depression, I can't do anything, nobody can help me, I'm waiting here. But additional to that, they have addictions. And so this is very tough for the people. That's a very tough situation. So it's like a double prison. That's how they feel. I have a double or three time. I'm sitting in one prison, but outside the prison there's again another prison, and above this prison there's another prison. You know what I mean? So sitting in my prison of depression, and then sitting in my addictions, and then I'm just going more into the tunnel. Then I say nobody loves me and I'm worthless, and then you're just inside, and it's very hard sometimes to come out. Um, uh, but I think this is very important that you also heard about these things, and that you understand that depression is not just a mental thing, but it is something which affects highly our body, highly, and very severe. It's not just a bit, you know, it's a very severe attack of the body as well. Because, of course, we understand that mental we understand that mental health is very important for our body health, right? Because from 10 sicknesses, 9 comes from mental disbalance or mental um, disorders. So the next point where we want to look is, why are successful and driven people often especially affected? That's also a very important question. So what are they doing which drives them even more into depression? And because sometimes people think, oh, depression is only for weak people. It's something for midlife crisis people, or it's for elderly people. No, it's not. Very successful people, young people, get depression. But why are they so much affected by it? And this is something I would like to show on the hit categories. So the hit categories shows you, and you can make a little bit of mark whenever you say that hits me. You know, either this hit you in your life, or this hits you. So there's a genetic part, and this can be in your family as well. If you look back into your past and you ask yourself, who had depression in my family history, or who committed suicide in my family? That would be a hit, a genetic hit. But there is also a development hit. It hits you, and you're a bit more open for depression. The ice is thinner if you have a lot of hits. You know what I mean? So not being raised by both biological parents. This is very interesting and very important point. So they found out in scientific research, if you have not been raised by both of your biological parents, that can be a hit category uh, for depression. Or, which is a big factor, and I have listened to many women and to many men in my coachings who suffered sexual abuse in their childhood, when they were small, or when they were young, or even some of them got depression. They had sexual abuse, they have been sexually abused when they're 50 or 60, and then depression comes out after a few years. So you can be sexually abused as a child, and depression comes out when you're 40. You can have been sexually abused with 80 or 19, and depression comes out with 25. But usually in my coachings, as we need to talk about a lot of different things, because there's so many areas in depression we need to deal with, to look at it. It's a longer process. Burnout is quite fast to recover. I would say it's much more easy as well. But there is a recovery way for depression as well. It's not like a one way and never come out. No, no. You can recover from depression as you can recover from burnout as well. But one of the things, one puzzle is often sexual abuse in the past, where people are suffering. Maybe they have not thought about it. Maybe they put it aside, and then it comes stronger. So that's also a big point. Then there's the social absence of social support. So many of the people, even they can be married, but they feel lonely or alone. So that's a difference, right? So you can be single and you don't feel alone. You know what to do. You just have friends, you meet people, you go for sport, right? But some people feel really absolutely alone, um, uh, and that's one hit, right? If you feel no, there's no social support, right? We had one lady, she was quite young, her mom died very early, and the father is not interested in her, and she doesn't feel any social support. She went into a major depression. So she's by the way on her way out of it, but that can be one hit. Negative, stressful life events in your life, whatever happened, people are trying to share that with me. Sometimes they say we never talk with anybody about that, but it's good. I had in one of my seminars just in January a lady coming to me, and she was 89, and something happened when she was 65. Can you imagine? For 34 years. No, what was it? Um, 70, 80, 20, 24 years. 24 years she was carrying a big burden in her life, right? So I think this stressful negative event can be a hit. And then I was very astonished by reading this in the literature, but they have studies and they have researchers, grandparents who raise grandchildren, you know. Grandparents can develop depression, but also later grandchildren can develop depression. So it is okay, of course, if parents say, "Oh, look, I have to do something. Can you take care of my children for 2 hours?" That's normal. That's not a problem, right? But many families, and even now we know a case here in Austria, the grandparents always have the grandchildren, you know. And one of the grandchildren not even want to go home anymore because of his three annoying siblings. So he always stays with grandparents. And then the parents try to force him to come home again, but he doesn't want to because the siblings are so annoying. He's the oldest. He's like 12, 13, and the other ones are all younger, and they are all have some mental disbalance, I would say, the children as well, with high activity and attention um, problems. And so I understand him, but it's you can see already this is not in a good balance, right? And then there's also a hit if a family member is an alcoholic. Oh, that's often a big, big problem, and it can be a hit in your life as well. So you see, you can make your hits. You can say, "Oh, this fits to me. This doesn't fit for me. It's not ready yet." Then there's of course a big part is nutrition, how you eat. Do you have a good dietary? So there was a study where they put on diet a low in tryptophan, 70%, 75% reduction in plasma concentrations. And there was a significant depression with sudden sadness, despair, and uncontrollable crying. So some people not even know where they find tryptophan in nutrition, but just for you, there's walnuts, almonds, sesame seed, roasted pumpkin seed, and flaxseed and tofu. They have a lot of tryptophan, which should not be missing. Is the before it turns to serotonin, we need tryptophan. But there's you have to also know. We always say there's the tryptophan um, thieves. It's milk and flesh, which really like tryptophan, and they are like thieves. So if you eat meat and flesh and milk and drink milk, then you don't have so much tryptophan, which can be um, put into serotonin. So that's also important for you to know, just a little footnote. There's a low omega-3 fat intake that could be also a hit on your life. That would be walnuts, pumpkin seeds, tofu, almonds, sesame seed. Um, and that's very important because there's a direct relationship to depression with a low omega-3 fat intake. The lower the 3 omega to omega-6 ratio, the higher the rate of depression. So that's very important, very important. Omega-6, we usually have too much, and then omega-3, we have too less. And then if the ratio is too big, then there's the rate of depression very high. And of course, there is low folic intake, which could be in spinach, lentils, chickpeas, asparagus, and so on. Or what we also usually see in our depression recovery seminars, there is a very low vitamin B intake. Yeah. Most of our clients, most of our participants, they have a missing of B12. So we can check that. You can check that in your blood as well, of course, as you go to the doctor and let him know that you would like to know how good is your vitamin B level, and especially vitamin B12. Most of our participants also lack in D. And then they have a high cholesterol, saturated fat, and sugar. We talked about that, which is a hit. If you're very high in cholesterol, very high in saturated fat, we just talked about that, or sugar, that's a hit for depression. It doesn't mean if you have this, it automatically comes. But more hits you have, more chance you have to develop this depression. We looked at genetics, we looked at development in your life, we looked at the social things in your life. We just shortly looked to your nutrition, which is very important, which of course can be supported. You can change that very fast in nutrition. That's not the big thing. A bit more tricky is the toxic thing when we have our indoor participants. When they come to the retreat, we also check with the medical doctor all the toxic levels. And this is very high in people's life today. They can be for water, calcium, bad calcium supplements. It can be lead by painting, manufacturing environments, important herbs and vitamins from the industry. Some beauty creams have it, some vaccinations, fish, beef, meat can have it. Sometimes you find even bismuth in medications, especially for intestinations, diarrhea, treatment for Helicobacter bacteria, and you have bismuth even in cosmetics. That's crazy. If you look to the levels, what people have in toxic things, that can also be a hit for depression. And then we have cardiac rhythm, so that how you sleep. Do you sleep regularly? Do you wake up regularly? Do you sleep more than 9 hours, or do you sleep less than 6 hours? Bath is unhealthy. That will be a hit for you. Not having regular hours of sleeping and eating. So sometimes I go to bed at 8, sometimes 10, sometimes midnight. Sometimes I eat at 6, sometimes I eat at 8, sometimes I eat at 9, sometimes I eat at 4, sometimes I eat at 8 in the night. You know what I mean? That would be a hit again for your rhythm, cardiac rhythm. And then, of course, addictions. Somebody drinks alcohol, is smoking, is a lot of coffee drinker or Red Bull drinker, and then he's using marijuana. That would be a hit for developing faster depression. And then, of course, lifestyle. If you don't have a regular exercise program, you just do it sometimes unregularly. You're not in the daylight at least for 30 minutes minimum per day, and you don't breathe fresh air. It's only in the car or inside the office or inside the house. That would be a hit again. And then we have a frontal lobe hit. That's some people think, oh, I can lose some weight with a low carbohydrate diet, right? It's fashion everywhere. But that would be a hit. If you follow that diet at the moment, you're endangering your frontal lobe. You're maybe using some weight, but you're losing also maybe some percentage of your frontal lobe, and that would be very bad, right? So I would not go with that fashion because carbohydrate is very important for your frontal lobe. If you're on high on meat or high on cheese diet, that's a hit. If you regularly watch television, that is damaging your frontal lobe as well in movies. If you're addicted on internet or chat addictions, you always have to chat, you always have to write, you can be also, that's not good, your frontal lobe. And of course, that's also big studies on that. Frequent sexual arousal outside of marriage is attacking your frontal lobe or going against your conscience. That would be also attack on your frontal lobe. So let's go and see this. We asked this question as we looked at it. We are on the third question at the moment. Why are successful and driven people often especially affected? Right? Let's look at this. This hits again. So many of these very successful and driven people, they are coming from successful parents, and not less in times they are not raised by both biological parents. So there is a divorce, and they have new friends, and then they remarry. And so that could be a hit in this very successful person. So, and often, as I talk with very high CEOs, very influential people, you think they have everything, but they're very lonely, you know, because they're so powerful, they have so much money, they have so much influence, they need to protect themselves, right? And the social support is very low. They have a lot of stressful, negative things in their life. And not seldom, it's funny, but it's like that. They have been raised, nothing against grandparents, they are great, but they have been raised by grandparents. Look at that. If you look to a successful, driven person, why are they so much affected? Oh, they're usually not looking so much on a high dietary tryptophan, right? They are not really taking care of this omega-3 intake. And then some people say, ah, but I do it with fish. But the problem is, if you do it with the fish, which not comes from a totally healthy environment, then you have a lot of toxic in it. You know, that's a big problem today. So you cannot do it really by fish because the side effects are so bad. And then you're not really looking for eating a lot of spinach and lentils and chickpeas and asparagus, you know. And they have a very high diet in cholesterol, saturated fat, and sugar. So you see the hits. Here we have often our business people, have high toxic levels and they have a very bad cardiac rhythm. And most of other high leaders, they are addicted, many of them in alcohol and many of them in marijuana. You cannot imagine how many high leaders are affected and addicted by marijuana. And most of them, they are using a lot of caffeine. And then if you look to the lifestyle, mm, breathing 30 minutes outside the air, having a regular exercise program, most of them are not doing it. Do they have an attack on their frontal lobe? Yes, on a high meat and cheese diet, they are watching movies to come down, and they're often addicted to internet. This comes out in the sexual arousal outside of marriage comes out in personal coachings when they talk about it. So it's not very seldom, but I have not highlighted it, but I should highlight it because that's a big topic, not only with leaders, but also in leaders in hospitals and medical doctors. And then, of course, this is also affected, going against conscience because if you know you have a nice, beautiful wife at home and children and family, and you're living against your frontal lobe, so if I scroll it and you see the highlights what I made, you see why successful and driven people often especially affected. Many of the points and so the hit to being and receiving and developing a depression is very high with high successful, high achievers and leaders. So they think that's normal, that's the game, that's how everything runs. But it's not. It will affect your body, it will affect your mental health, it will affect you. And then there's a lot of denial. No, I don't have depression. It's only for weak people. It's only for old people. It's only for midlife problems, you know, but not for me. So there's a big denial, but everything is going down because even though you have a high leader position, if you have money and influence, you're only a human being. So you cannot buy it out. You have to deal with the effects, if you believe it or not, if you want to know it or not. But it's very important that we know that even high achievers are highly affected by depression, and the hit score is very high. So I like this quotation: to know yourself is a great knowledge. Do you agree? It's from the little book Mind, Character, and Personality. To know yourself is a great knowledge because denial doesn't bring us forward, right? It's important to know ourselves. And then as we look into this little quotation here, self-knowledge leads to humility, right? And to trust in God, but it does not take the place of efforts for self-improvement. Can you see that? It does not take the place of efforts of self-improvement. And that's so important. The question is, can I really do something if I have depression? You know, is it possible? Are there really efforts of self-improvement? Can I do something? Because most people, if you would interview them today and they are diagnosed with a depression, they say, no, I can't do anything. I have to wait. I hope I find this right medicine, you know, and they feel like victims and they talk like victims, you know. But when I help more than 500 people in the health center to come out of depression and more than 100 people in the Happiness Mind program for long term, I have seen that there is a possibility of efforts of self-improvement, even in depression. You know, my family member was 10 years in depression, so I know what I'm talking about. But I have seen severe, major depressions, middle depressions, soft depressions, and any stage there are efforts of self-improvement, believe it or believe it not. So um, probably heard about it. One of the most famous students from Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was got like 29 honor doctors around the world. He was the big psychologist in the so-called logotherapy, and he died because he was old. But the most famous student is um, Elizabeth Lucas, Professor Dr. Elizabeth Lucas. And she's now 84, 85 years, and she was training me for 7 years. And she said, Mr. Leonard, there are two different depressions. There is one, the noogene depression. The noogene comes from nous, the mind, the spirit, right? Noogene depression. And there is an endogene depression, which comes from the body. And she said most depressions are noogene depressions, coming from the mind, the way of thinking, right? And if this is like this, as she said, which I really believe, and I have seen in more than 600 cases with my own eyes, I can say there is a place of efforts of self-improvement. Even if it's hard, it's possible. But the question is, because this can hinder you of believing me, you don't need to believe me, but you can think about it, you can study it, you can try it. Can I do something against depression? A very important question will be, um, is it treatable? According to international research and clinical guidelines, depression is highly treatable. That's interesting, isn't it? But you need coaching or psychotherapy, you need social support, you need a lifestyle intervention, you have to change something. And this can significantly improve recovery for many people. So that's very, very important that we believe that. But the question is, how? How can this happen? Because if if we don't believe that we can regain inner strength, clarity, and joy in life, right? We will not do anything. We will just wait. And so I want to show you this one here. As we are having depression recovery seminars, and this is indoor, so this people are coming for 2 weeks. They're staying there. You can see here with the gray mark, there are this one had like 36, 37. So this one has like 28 depression that if you do the depression test, right? What I also showed you the link. This one has like also 37. This is a bit lower, 37. This maybe 28. This one is like 25, the gray one. And look at this one, 44. That's very high. And this one is lower, depression. It has like 18. And you have to know with between 0 and 8, you don't have a depression. Between 9 and 13, you have a minimal depression. Then 14 to 19, you have a simple depression. From 20 to 28, it's a middle depression, middle heavy, we call it. And then from 29 to 63, you have a very major depression. So you see that most people here, at least the first one, the second one, the third one, are having severe major depression. This is coming close to a severe depression. They are still in the middle, but going to high one. This is a very, very high depression. So after 2 weeks, this is the orange one. After 2 weeks, taking the depression test again. Isn't that interesting? This person made success, right? This person too. Look at this one. coming with 37, going down to less than 9. This is no depression anymore, right? This one too, going down, going down. Oh, this person, oh, I had difficulties in 2 weeks, didn't apply, right? Um, uh, the principles. Well, got even worse with 1 point. But look at this one. This person came with 44, very severe major depression. After 2 weeks, 8. That's no depression. Whew, right? And I see this test since 12 years. We make a test at the beginning as they're coming, the first day. We take the test, and after 2 weeks, we take the test again with them. So that's interesting, isn't it? So that's really amazing results. I always tell them, look, what you experience in 2 weeks is what you will experience in 9 months. Because here we are helping you every day. You have a structure, uh, you have cooks, you have water treatments, you have everything, right? But then you're alone, and that's hard. But if you build up and you follow the principles, and then we put them in mentor, we give them live sessions on Wednesday, we give them 100 training videos, then they come up, come up, come up, come up. And after 9 months, they come back to the result after 2 weeks. If they think this will stay, I always tell them, if you think this will stay like this, you're lying to yourself. Because after 3 days, 4 days, they're going back to major depression. They're going back where they came from. So that's very sad on one side, but the other side, it gives them a bit of hope. It's possible. I'm not a victim. If I do something, if I know what to do, this will help me, right? And so that's very interesting. So without integration, the change does not last, right? So all the people return quickly, usually after 3, 4 days, latest after 2 weeks. They come back to the old patterns, the old thinking, the old habits. They see the same walls, they see the same problems, they have the same environment, they have the same family, and all this comes back again. So that's why we created the Happiness Mind program 5 years ago to help them to integrate the program in their daily lives. So how can an anti-depression program work? Because the Happiness Mind program is an anti-depression program and also anti-burnout program. Many people ask this question: how is it possible that results improve so much in a short time? Isn't depression simply a disease caused by low serotonin in the brain? Have you heard about that? Yes, but modern science shows that the answer is more complex. There is a development in the last years. The old theory says it's a chemical imbalance. So for many decades, doctors said it's a chemical imbalance. And they always said depression is equal to little serotonin in the brain. Always. And we know serotonin is a neurotransmitter that influences mood, sleep, and emotions. That's right. And this is why people got this medication, SSRI. Maybe you heard about that. Many people are taking it. It's called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So if you have the cell between the cells, there is serotonin, and then serotonin will be taken again inside between the cells, and this medicine is hindering that serotonin will be taken inside the cell again. So it just closes the door, and then they say, oh no, you have more serotonin between the neurotransmitters, between the nerves, and that's why this medicine improves the mood, improves and will help you to come out of depression. That sounds like a good theory, but it usually doesn't work. I read like more than 20 or 30 PhD documents about depression from around the world, and every PhD document said it's 50-50 with the medical treatments. So it's not proven by scientific research that it really helps. You have a placebo effect, and then that makes it to 50-50. Does it help? Does it not help? Oof, that's a big research. You can make your own studies. You go to the libraries, you go to internet, you say PhD depression, and then you can read, like me, thousands of pages about depression, and you get smarter. You will see what they say. They are not connected to each other, and it's very interesting to read these PhD documents. So, so the thing is, studies have found out that many people with depression do not necessarily have lower serotonin levels. They also found out, as I told you just, antidepressant medication helps some people, but not everyone. the problem is the side effects because it cuts you off the very bad mood, but also the very high mood. So people are like robots living something in the middle. They're not really living creatures anymore. And they are some, how do you say that in English? A bit slow emotional reaction. You know what I mean? Because it's cut off. The low is cut off, the very bad mood, but also the high mood is cut off. So if I would paint you that on a wall or on a flip chart, I would make you like this and then cut off the highs. So there's no mountain anymore, but there's no valley anymore. And that makes life very sad because we need mountains. We need valleys, you know? We need some hiking. Even Mauritius is quite flat, but you like your little mountains, what you have, right? Same thing in Austria, same thing in Switzerland, same thing even in Finland. Yeah, so wherever you go, people like not always to be on the flat side, right? And that happens as you take medicine inside, that it cuts off you the highs, the nice, the beautiful things, the loving things, but it also cuts off the sad things, the crying, and so on and so on. So, and scientific research said there can be improvement also without medication, you know? And so that's very, very interesting. So modern scientific view today is depression is a multifactorial condition. That's very important, very important. Don't forget this word, multifactorial condition. It's a multifactorial condition. It's very important. That means there's different parts, which is very important as people are suffering depression. It's some very important is thought patterns. So what do they believe? How do they see the world? How much do hope is there? What kind of catastrophic thinking do they have? So the thought patterns is like tremendously important. Then of course the stress system in the body. We talked about that before. How much are they isolated and how much support do they have with their family, right? Um, uh, then the behavior patterns. So how do I behave? Do I have a withdrawal all the time? Is there low activity? Is there reduced movement? So what is happening in this life? And then how much meaning is in the life, right? So this is very, very important that there is a multifactorial condition. And if you look here, why antidepressant programs can work is because in coaching or psychotherapy, it helps you to change your thought patterns. This will not happen alone. You can go to seminars, you can watch YouTube videos, you can read books, but your thought is always coming back to what you have done before. So, especially in depression, people are clinging to this part of the brain and they don't want to change so fast because they are like a pit bull terrier. You know, they bite inside and then they don't want to let it go. And you can talk to them and they don't want to let it go. And so that's very important to have coaching or psychotherapy to really change the thought patterns because you can increase your physical activity, which helps you a lot in depression. You can also meet more people. You can work on a better daily structure and you can find meaning and purpose in your life. But if you still have the old patterns in your mind, in your thoughts, then a vegan food or more sport or more friends will not help you. So you need to get rid of that. And this is why we are so much trained to change the thought patterns in order to be successful, which you will have difficulties to do it alone. Because if I'm standing in the bus and the bus is pushing the brakes, I cannot hold myself and say, no, I'm holding myself. No, I will not fall down. I have to hold myself outside, right? So when a bus is shaking, I can somehow hold myself and not fall as well. So we need help from outside. This is the picture what I wanted to show you. Um, uh, and I love these studies. I hope you still have a bit time, but otherwise I'm recording it and we'll send it to you. But I love these studies. Look, it's Harvard Health Publishing, Harvard Medical School. People who regularly worried about the future and dwelled on the past saw larger drops in cognition and had more harmful brain proteins than those who do not. So what is that about? Chronic worrying. So all the time, right? Worrying. What happens? What happens? Or ruminating could be bad for your brain. Study authors found that those who regularly engaged in what the authors called repetitive negative thinking were more likely to experience cognitive decline, including memory problems, than those who didn't. They also had higher levels of proteins called beta amyloid and tau in their brains. The accumulation of these proteins, which create damaging clumps. So, what's all about this? This is so interesting for me because there are studies, but the world is not talking about it. So, when I found this study, I was so interested and I said, look at that. Nobody's talking about that if you look into depression. Why? Because they don't have any medicine against that, and maybe they don't want to see it. But Harvard Health Publishing, Harvard Medical School saw it. Repetitive negative thinking. Something happens with you. What is it? What it happens? They also had a higher level of proteins, beta amyloid and tau in their brains. So that's very interesting. You produce a protein called beta amyloid, and you produce a tau protein, that's the name, in your brain. And look at that. I want to show you what these two proteins does with your brain. So these are the beta amyloid and tau proteins, which you produce by negative thinking and by worrying. You can see these two proteins. That's how they look like. One is blue, one is orange in that picture. This is a healthy neuron, very healthy. And let's look now. Kirsi would start worrying, or Dan would start thinking badly all the time, right? Look at that, what happens. Here is the tau protein. It attacks the cell. Abnormal tau accumulations. And it exactly goes to the nerve cells. Isn't it interesting? Is that maybe the reason that it's not a high or low serotonin lack, but it's this tau protein produced by our own body, which affects the cells, and the cells cannot communicate so well. But look at this, beta amyloid clumps into plaques. So you have this tau proteins that's exactly at the cell, but at the end of the cell, you have this beta amyloid. You see that? They are built up between the neurons only by repetitive negative thinking and chronic worrying. I tell you, this, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm right. And if I'm right, we can change that. Change your thinking, and you change your brain, right? And you come back to normal again. So that's why improvements can happen really quick, because people get hope, their isolation decreases, they feel understood and supported. Of course, we hunt them. They have to do a lot of sport. Sleep improves, and you have significant neurobiological effects. I love it. I really love this program because it's so easy. It's so powerful. If you have the right people who are going with you through depression, ah, now I'm not a victim. Now I can do something. Now there is a solution, you know? And people are very happy because activate your body in order to activate your mind. We have that in the spirit of prophecy already. To neglect the mind is to neglect the body. Oh, that's interesting. If you neglect your body, you neglect your mind. So it's always two sides. Some people say, oh, I have to do something good for my body. They have no idea how much good they do for their mind. You know, there is a study with 300 people, cardiac victims that included exercise and the recovery program showed 20% suffered from depression when they began their exercise commitment after a 36 sessions exercise program during 3 months period. Depression was totally resolved in 2/3 of the individuals. Isn't that interesting? So I had a good example of that as well. There was a doctor in one of our programs. She said, my husband was a medical doctor. My parents are doctors. Everybody's a doctor. And there was no depression in our family. You know what I mean? They said, you don't have depression. This is secret. Nobody will know it. We will not talk about it. You don't have depression. But she had depression. So she wanted to get medicine, and the family said, no, you don't get any medicine. You don't have depression. It's a shame factor. And then she said, I was taking a home, like a bicycle for home, and I was practicing for hours every day. And she said, I was driving away from my depression. So that's possible, but only if you don't have negative thought patterns. If you have negative thought patterns, you need somebody who helps you out coming out of it. And it doesn't help you if your wife or husband say, think positive, think positive, think positive, because then you think even more negative. It's not so easy like this. There are some tools we got. And I had one example. He tried to do a lot of sport. He was in Salzburg, but then he called me and says, Kris, I need help. And I said, where are you? He said, here and here. I took my car, was driving 1.5 hours to him because it's not always the only solution to do sport, right? You need sometimes more than this. And I think by driving to him, I saved his life because otherwise he would probably commit suicide on that evening. So, so the question is why relapse often happens. So why is there backsliding, right? Why after 2 weeks, maybe they go to the States or they go to Germany or wherever, they go to a depression recovery seminar. It's a nice, beautiful program. It's like a beamer into the future. You're beamed into the future, but they then come back and there's a big relapse because, of course, the old habits, the old patterns, everything is, you come from an artificial environment. You're somewhere like holidays, and now you're coming back. Ooh, and the flood of problems and the flood of challenges. Oh, they just overcome you. And then they all, most of them, I would say 95% fall back into this old daily life. And because of that, I had some interviews with hospitals in Austria. I said, look, with us, they are only staying like 2 weeks for the indoor program. In the Happiness Mind program, people staying with me until 9, 12 months, so quite longer. So, but I said, in your programs, they are for 4, 8, 12 weeks. How much, what is your percentage that people backslide to their old life? And they said more than 80% backslide. Why? I said, well, I asked them why, and they said because it's an artificial program. We are outside of their environment. We need a program. They said, Mr. Lenart, we need a program which gives them a program inside their life. And that's how Happiness Mind program developed. We said, okay, we need to do something. And that's why we developed a 9 to 12 months program, but not artificially, but inside their daily life. So what is it? What people recommend? They recommend the cognitive behavior therapy. This is very good because you really talk about the attitudes. They recommend the resilience research, how to have a better skin, and so that things are not just hit you. And then you are also recommended logotherapy, which I already mentioned to you by Viktor Frankl. And so that's what I did. I combined these three things because this one here, what we usually use, is invented by Viktor Frankl. Not everything, but the very important key element where we use for depression is invented by Viktor Frankl and was developed later by Albert Ellis, who developed the cognitive behavior therapy. So I think this is very powerful and very strong. So what are we learning in the Happiness Mind program is how to overcome sadness, pessimism, because that's probably something you have been trained by your parents, by your siblings, by your teachers, right? And by the world, because the world is very pessimism, at least in our area. When I open the news, I can see it's very pessimism trained. And then we overcome past failures because, yeah, everybody makes mistakes, but how can we think about it? How can we deal with it? And then if you feel guilty, is it really that you are guilty? If you are guilty, how can you get rid of it? So how can you forgive yourself and others and let go? I have developed a 10 steps program to how to forgive very practically, and the 16 steps how to let go, because it's not the same thing. It's two different things. Then we talked also we are learning in this Happiness Mind program about purity and the healed heart. How to come out of I am punished by God, I'm punished by life, I'm some people even say I'm cursed. How to come out of that? And then we learn about the self-esteem, the self-respect, very important, about criticism about others, because depressive people, they have a lot of power, but negative power. Sometimes they do you think they don't have power. Oh man, they have a lot of negative power. Whew, you know, they criticize themselves strongly and others strongly. And they have even power to commit suicide, because to kill somebody or yourself, you need a lot of power. If you don't have power, you cannot do it, you know? And I have seen a lot of stories what they are doing in depression. And I always say, you have a lot of power, but you have the wrong power, you know? So we're changing the power from very negative to very positive. We are learning how to say yes to the life. That's very important. Many people running around with no, I don't know. Shall I say yes to the life? That's not good. You need a commitment. And then you learn how to cry. Oh, many people who are crying, I've seen that in my last program, they were crying because of self-pity. That's a terrible cry. You don't need to cry about yourself, you know, but a real, honest, authentic cry is beautiful. But you have to learn it. When to cry and when not to cry. How to overcome crying. And then how to find peace. Oh, I had one person, she was like 30 years old, very young. He had three children, beautiful family, but broken, totally broken. She has major depression plus a big addiction since 15 years of alcohol. Whew, right? Restlessness, absolutely restlessness. And then I helped her to come out of depression. I helped out of, with God's help, of course, come out of this strong addiction of alcohol. And then she said, I had never so much peace in my life. Yeah, of course. If you experience the gospel, if you experience the principles, it really changes you. And then how to find interest in life again. Yeah, that's so important. So important. Life is great. Life is amazing. It's not only about problems. You know, they always sing the song, the melody in Moll. I say there's a detour. You know, we can sing a different song. You know, and that's where we also read in the Bible that we learn a new song. So not the old, sad, terrible song we always singing. We have to learn a new song, and so that's what we're doing. We're learning a new song. You will love any flower, any animal. You also learn how to make good decisions, how to gain new energy, and to sleep like a baby. This Happiness Mind program is also a sleep like a baby program, without stomach ache and without teeth problems. Yeah. So when I lay down, I sleep within 3 minutes. So that's maybe for some it's a challenge. Just a client said last week, if I lay down, I need at least 1 hour to sleep. I say, oh, 1 hour, I'm already went through my first sleep phrase, you know. So no time for 1 hour. Sleep like a baby program. How to overcome irritability and how to love food again, the right food. So because if you have depression and you take too much sugar in yourself, then your bacteria is changing in your digestion, and then this can also cause depression. They give mouses a lot of sugar and they become depressed. Did you know that? So the sugar, sometimes we think, oh, it makes me happy, maybe for a second, 2 minutes. But then this bacteria, this bad bacteria says, oh, thank you. And then they will develop and the good bacteria need to go. And then you're not in a good mood. You can get depression from sugar. So love the good food again and how to focus in life, how to find joy in your life. And of course, all this will have an effect on your marriage. So if you say, wow, this was an interesting seminar and I would like to know more about it, maybe you find out if you're brave, if you make the test. Um, um, we will email you this link of the test. Maybe you want to do that, but maybe you already know that there is something not so good in your life called depression. It will affect your body, your heart, your blood pressure, and many other organs. And you say, I would like to have a clarity call. Um, um, then we can have a clarity call and we can look at, if you would be fitting into the Happiness Mind program, right? So I will send you this link here. I will put that into the chat. And so you can fill it out, and then I can see when I will contact you so we can talk a bit about your life, your goals, your condition, your situation, and the way out if there's a depression. But so I hope that you could learn a lot tonight in this seminar about um, depression, and that there is a way. I hope you could see a absolutely new way of looking into it. And I hope that by this, you, for your life, but maybe also for your family members, maybe also for your colleagues, and maybe for some church members, this can be a new light so that people say, oh, look at that. There is a way. Well, let's look at that way. So this was my purpose for tonight, to give you encouragement, give you also some comfort, but give you also a bit of be careful. Don't put it on the long bench, do something against it. And if you don't know how, this could be a great possibility for you to say, I would like to get to know the Happiness Mind program better. I would like to be trained. And as you train, as you get new life, you can train maybe even others to start a new life. So I would like to stop the recording and then also listen to some of your questions.